NewsNation's chief Washington anchor, Leland Vittert, and host of On Balance with Leland Vittert, is opening up about his journey with autism. It's chronicled in a new book, Born Lucky, a dedicated father, a grateful son, and my journey with autism. Leland Vittert joins us now. Leland, thank you for being here today.
Justin, great to be with you.
So a lot of people watch you every night, and they might have no idea that you have autism. And in fact, you weren't told yourself until you were in your mid-20s. What was it like finding out that you had autism as an adult, and how were you diagnosed?
So when I was about 5 or 6 years old, Justin, my parents were told that they needed to have me evaluated, right? Which is the worst thing parents can hear. So they take me one of those little medical office building things. They're scared. And they sit for about 2 hours in the waiting room, linoleum floors, stale coffee, old magazines, waiting for me to be brought back. And the woman brings me back and she pulls my parents into a conference room and she says, look, we don't really understand what's going on inside his head. We've got a lot of issues here. We have behavioral issues. He cannot relate to anybody his own age, talk to anybody his own age, never gets invited to anything. If a kid touches him in the lunch line, he turns around and slugs him. He's got big sensory issues, so anything that touches me, it touched my feet or socks or jackets I didn't like, I would melt down. And I had a huge learning disability. So an IQ test is 2 halves of a test averaged together as your IQ score. A 20-point spread on your IQ score is a learning disability. I had a 70-point spread on my IQ test. They said they'd never seen anything like it, never had a bigger spread. So the woman said to my parents, it's very difficult to understand what's going on inside his head, meaning my head. So at that point, my father said, what can we do? And the woman says, not much, sort of meet him where he's at. And my dad goes, is there anything we can do? And she says, generally not. So Born Lucky is the story of my dad working to adapt me to the world rather than try and sort of make the world adapt to me, which obviously oftentimes is now done to kids who are having a hard time. So this book, Born Lucky, is hope for every parent of a kid having a hard time. Doesn't have to be autism, doesn't have to be ADHD, difficulty growing up, bullying, whatever it is. This book is that proof of the hope that parents should have, the agency they have, the power they have. And you and I, Justin, are both TV anchors, so it's a narcissistic profession. But I'm not narcissistic enough to think that the reason it's number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list is because of me or my story. It's because of what it shows that parents can do.
For me, as someone who lost their dad, and I felt like I had a super dad, and I think you do too, I so appreciate and respect the gratitude that you display for your father in this book. Will you tell us about your father and how he helped you in your journey with autism?
For sure. And Justin, I think, as you noted in this, how significant you losing your father was to you in your life and how significant it was to my dad. My dad lost his dad at 16. And that's part of this story about how when my dad lost his dad, 16 years old, his brother told him, rainy night in November, my dad had been getting ready for a date. And instead of going on the date, they went down to my grandfather's office and opened the safe in the office. And in that safe was a letter to his 2 boys, one of them being my father, obviously. And the letter talked about how a man is defined by his character, not his accomplishments, not his awards, not his success. And that's really been the driving factor for my father for now more than 60 years since his dad died, and for the past 43 years raising me, was that you are defined by your character. And when my dad sort of saw the troubles I was having in school, and obviously what the psychologist said, he said, I'm going to devote my life to giving my son a chance. And that meant being home from when I got home at school every day. That meant spending a couple of hours with me every night, putting me back together from the bullying and the isolation and the difficulties I was having. And I didn't know until we started working on Born Lucky, Justin, that my dad, after he would leave my bedroom at night, I'd go to bed, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, whatever it was, having sort of let out all the emotion of what I had gone through that day, he would walk downstairs every day into our living room, and he would sit there in the dark in the living room himself and start crying. And then the next morning, he'd get up and do it all over again. So, yes, Born Lucky is a story of hope and the power parents have. And I also wrote it, I think, just to be able to tell my dad thank you, and show that I really understood probably not all that he's done, but as much as I could.
It's hard not to get emotional when you know, read the story. Or for me, I'm listening to the audiobook right now because everywhere I go, the book is sold out. So I tried to get a hard copy, sold out, so I'm listening to the audiobook. Your book addresses, though, the wounding speculations about what causes autism. And I'm bringing this up as debates are flaring surrounding the causes and contributing factors. We have Health Secretary RFK Jr. claiming that there may be a link between circumcision and autism due to the distribution of Tylenol to infants during the procedure. Where do you stand on this debate?
Well, I stand that I'm not in the debate. And just to put a fine point on it, Justin, we don't get into any of the science of autism or the diagnosis or the spectrum or even the number of cases and how they've increased or anything like that in Born Lucky. This Born Lucky is just my story. And we really don't want it to be anything about that part. This is a story of parental love. But to answer your question, and it's a good one and it's a fair one because you're a journalist and because autism is now front and center in the American conversation. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I have the chemistry grades to prove that. So in terms of being able to talk about the issue of Tylenol or anything like that, I'm not your guy. What I can say is, having grown up with autism, I am so happy now that people are talking about the causes of autism as the scientific question of our time. And it should be, because we've gone from 1 in 1,500 from when I was a kid to 1 in 32 now, or 1 in 31, higher for boys, 3 times higher, and higher still for poor and minority communities. So if we can find a way for autism to not be an issue for future generations, why wouldn't we? I heard somebody criticize RFK Jr. and say he's obsessed with finding the cause of autism. Why wouldn't we be obsessed with finding the cause of autism?
Well, that's why I want to ask you this. I want to know if you feel that the partisan divide in this country will avert people from trusting new information about autism or any other medical issue or mental health issues for that matter. You know, it seems that people are afraid to accept new information right now.
It's a great question. Probably not one that I'm smart enough to answer. The divide and the partisan divide seems to color almost everything. What I've been really overjoyed by with the release of Born Lucky and the reception to it is that parental love seems to have escaped the partisan divide. And I say that because a couple of days ago, I was on with Joe Scarborough of MSNBC, and all we talked about was the mutual parental journey that he and my father went on. He has a son on the Asperger spectrum, and talked about other parents who are all just working day in and day out trying to help their kids be more, right? And that really is the story of Born Lucky, is how parents, by showing up, by teaching their kids that self-esteem is earned, not given, and by helping their kids be more and holding their hand through adversity rather than trying to take the adversity away, walking through hell with them, can really change their children's life.
Again, the book is Born Lucky. It's available now. And don't forget that you can watch On Balance with Leland Vittert weeknights on NewsNation.
Hey,
All right,
thanks,
thank you,
Justin.
Leland.
It's good to see you.